Good morning. Welcome back to the Third Perspective podcast. This will be episode 18 with myself, Corey, and such as always. And just a reminder, any of the opinions here expressed are our own. Live again on YouTube. Well, not really live, recorded anyways. I hope everybody wasn't too shocked by our faces last week. What'd you think, Satch?
I mean, I think we did okay, but I mean, we'd have to leave it up to the audience to let us know how we did.
Yeah, absolutely. And obviously, always room to get better.
Yeah.
So our episode 18, you had a really interesting topic we were discussing offline here. Why don't you bring us up to speed on it?
Yeah, I was just kind of thinking about networks and networking and how to step out of our own sort of comfort zone of our own network
Hmm.
and then engaging into another network or community, um, and why one would want to do that. And so I was kind of thinking along those lines when I threw it out at you. And yeah, I think there's a lot of benefit to stepping out of our own comfort zone, quote unquote, networks of people that we kind of surround ourselves with,
Hmm.
especially if we're trying to move in a direction that um, might not be the same direction the current network that you're in is going, if that
So
makes sense.
what's your definition of a network? So I know what my definition is, but for anybody who maybe isn't used to working within a network itself, what's your definition for them?
Well, for me, I guess when I say network, I mean just another community, right? Another
Mm.
community of people, a community of people that you may not be engaging with on a regular basis, and they may not be engaging with you on a regular basis. So that could mean anything, man. Like if you're a stay-at-home mom, right?
Hmm.
And your network may or may not be very big of
Hmm.
people or your community. And for example, some stay-at-home moms, at least when I was married, I saw this experience with my ex-wife when she first had a kid. She didn't have anyone to communicate with and
Yeah.
connect with and hang out with and all these types of things, right? And it does take a toll on people's minds and how they function. And I think if there's a way we can, or at least we're having this conversation, okay, well, a stay-at-home mom can connect with a community externally that she may not have already engaged with, i.e., a Facebook group of single moms, new mothers, or postpartum community groups, or whatever. Like this, that's kind of the idea I was thinking about when I brought this up to you.
Right. And I think we probably have more, if I think about it, I have more networks in my life than what I would traditionally think. Networking tends to be a fairly work related sort of thing. Like, I'm gonna go out there, I'm gonna network. You think the businessman with the suitcase sort of thing and handing business cards out to, but it's not specifically what we're talking about. I have a family dynamic network, people that I can draw support from, people that I can draw resources from, people that I can bounce ideas off. I also have a friend network that is separate from that family network. And those are people that, can come and go. They can be hard and fast, long term friends, those sort of things. But often you'll find that maybe you're more comfortable bouncing something off a friend network than you are a familial network. And then outwards and upwards with work. And then something you've been doing quite a bit is networking through sort of the podcasting community and things like that and getting your message out there as well. So I think when we're thinking about networks, we have a lot more around us. We might not just identify them as that, and we might not be aware of them.
And I think, for sure, when I first heard that term, I thought business, money,
Yeah.
sales, do this, that, and the other.
Yeah.
And that's absolutely not what I'm suggesting at all. I'm just suggesting or talking about cultivating networks or communities and connecting with other communities or networks where you can um, get supported or learn, or you can do the same for that other community, just
Yeah.
to uplift others, right?
Yep.
And share knowledge between those groups of people. Like that example of that mom who's at home might feel a little bit isolated and a little bit alone, and may not, maybe dealing with certain types of things, and she doesn't want to feel strange or weird. Maybe she can connect with someone else, and someone outside of her familial or friend network connects with someone else experiencing the same things, and now they can have that connection, have that conversation, and move through that sort of experience.
Yeah, and to not just simply define us as, this is something I'm going through, so I'm only going to seek out networks that are also going through that. I think there's a power in that, obviously, that shared experience, but I think there's also something to be said about stepping out of that network as well. So you bring up the single mom, for instance, or somebody who's struggling, and obviously reaching out several fantastic communities that are out there on Facebook, things like that that you've mentioned, but also looking at reaching out, excuse me, farther than that and stepping outside of your network. You were mentioning that as well. What are the benefits of stepping outside of that network?
Oh man, so I can speak to my own experience. So stepping out of your own comfort zone or network or community, however you want to phrase it or term it, requires, at least in my experience, um, practice to start
Yeah.
it, right? Because you don't know what you're doing when you first do it, and really why you're doing it sometimes, right? And through the process of connecting with others, you can get or define or create more clarity on why you're doing it and how you're doing it. So, for example, with me, when I first started on my path and journey, I was just trying to connect with people just to connect with people,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
Just to understand people, and so I can share my experiences so they can understand me better. And through that process, then I started connecting with bigger groups of people. And through that, so for example, I'll give you an example of what I mean by stepping out of the community. So I now have connected with an organization called Kids Play Foundation,
Hmm.
and the CEO is a 24-year veteran of the VPD, Vancouver Police Department. He's currently serving. His name's Cal DeSange. And I connected with him about a month ago just because I'm trying to do outreach, so to speak,
Yeah.
right? And that's essentially what networking is, doing some outreach. So I was connecting with him, and then he connected with me. We had a conversation. We saw that we had some similarities and there was an alignment there. So, and that's where we left it, really. And then through that, over the last month or two, he would invite me to certain things and say, your experiences are kind of beneficial. It might be able to help our network over here or our people over here. So I'm like, "Oh, cool, I'll come have a conversation." And then now my sort of experiences and my networks, which are you and everyone else that are connected to it, are able to enter into that network, be able to share our experiences and whatnot. And then now we can bring that individual or that network, i.e. Cal DeSange, to a space that we're in. And maybe he could share some of his experiences and knowledge so that we can all gain from those experiences and become better for it.
Right. Be a conduit to a larger network, as you said. So I don't have to break through into that network because you already have. And because my network is you, then my network is also these people through you as a conduit.
Hmm. Yeah, I think so, man. Because I mean, I think, look, you and I are having this conversation now. I'm better for it, and through that, I can connect with someone else, and it's connected to you. It's all connected like a network.
Now, what are some examples? Because I know for myself, when I think of networks and things like that, especially when I've been at a situation where I didn't feel I could do it myself, and needed to step out of my comfort zone, as it were times when I sort of internalize things. So I know in this day and age of social media, anybody watching this on YouTube is probably watching it on a phone, for instance, somewhere tucked away. They're not watching it, with the family surrounded around them and things like that. We tend to be very isolated in what we're doing. So our
Hmm.
networks tend to get very small, even though we have this huge ability to um, touch base on all of this knowledge. It tends to be fairly isolating. So even though I have a lot of knowledge, I mean, you're 3 o'clock in the morning, you're looking on WebMD because you got a cough. The next thing you know, you think you're dying. The network isn't there, but the knowledge is. If we're not reaching out and we're not getting outside of that isolation that we have, again, stepping out of our own network, I think we're putting ourselves at a disadvantage, which I think is what you're saying as well. If we're
Hmm.
not expanding that network and getting outside of that comfort zone and really doing it for the sake of doing it, as it were. I know you've mentioned before walking up and talking to people in coffee shops, for instance, just because. And it's not it's not because you're lonely and you want friends. It's because you're just trying to expand your network as to people that you might know. Maybe you've seen this person 3 4 times at the coffee shop. You guys have nodded heads once or twice, and you start talking to them, and the next thing you know, super cool person, and look at all this great stuff, like you said, reaching out to Cal, right?
Well, I mean, look, man, another example would be you and I,
Hmm.
right? Like, I mean, there's it's beautiful to be able to see the networks and then connect with them and being able to have conversation with people that you may not have even had that conversation with. And look, man, it doesn't have to be anything other than even just that.
Hmm.
Just connecting with another human and sharing ideas that you would have never had before. So, for example, like you and I connected through the collective.
Yep.
That's a network, right? And then through that, you and I had a conversation, and we just went from there, and then now we're doing this, right? So, I mean, I think, and I know I can understand how it could be. I don't want to say daunting, but like, maybe someone might not see what's the point in me having a conversation with someone over there. Why would I even do that? Like, I mean,
Hmm.
I don't even know who that person is. Yeah, that's true. You don't, and you don't have to have any conversations.
Yeah.
But I think at least for me, I was missing out on a lot of pleasurable experiences
Hmm.
by isolating myself from connecting and reaching out into other networks. And in me doing those things, man, I've enriched my life. Like, it doesn't have to be anything other than that.
Hmm.
Enriching your life by connecting with people. Now it's getting to the point where, man, I'm excited to connect with whoever. And I'm planning to fly to Halifax in January just to connect with somebody
Yeah.
and see if we can have some fun. And maybe that turns into something, and maybe it doesn't, whatever, but they seem like cool people. I'm going to go.
Hmm.
And it really started, actually, me. I'll give you a story. Like, ooh, over a year ago for sure. I was still kind of starting on this path, so to speak, like
Hmm.
maybe a year and a half, 2 years ago,
Hmm.
and actually about a year ago, after I had run my first 100K. And I was still kind of figuring out, oh man, how do I do this? How do I reach out? How do I connect with people? I'm not good at it. What do I do? Right?
Right.
And
Yeah.
so I was thinking, I was like, man, it'd be kind of cool to go to Depot. I've never been to Depot before, and I don't, I'm not a member, I'm not a cop or anything. So I was, yeah, everyone talks about it. It'd be kind of cool to go there. And do I know anyone there? That's the ideas that started happening, right?
Yeah.
And then I was like, oh, I kind of do. I know Steve Watkins. He's a recruiter out there, and he's Real Cops for Real Life. So, and this is the power of network. I had seen him on a live that Seb Lavoie did,
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. I
right?
think I
And
watched the same thing. Yeah.
yeah, so I saw him do that, and I was like, oh, so that's what made me aware of who he was, right? And I was like, I see something kind of cool. I've never been to Depot. I'd like to go and check it out. So I hit up Seb, and I go, hey Seb, what do you think, man? I'm thinking about just going to Regina and connecting with this guy. What do you think? Just to kind of, and he's like, yeah, cool, you should. He's a nice guy. And
Hmm.
then so I hit up Steve, and I connected with him on Instagram. I go, hey man, I'm thinking about coming out there. You down? And he's like, what? What are you thinking about? I was like, I can come out. I was like, I can come out, and maybe if you got some of the recruits, maybe we can go for a run or something. I don't know, or at the very least, we can go hang out. Right?
Right. Right.
That turned into me flying to Regina, me staying at his house, hanging out with his wife and kid, going out to dinner, meeting some recruits that were there, going on like a few kilometer run. And then I ended up, and then another day when I was there, I went to a jiu-jitsu school out there, trained with some people there, met some more people there, and it was just a. And then I came back from and then I'll dive deeper on this. I didn't have the funds to even fly there, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because I didn't have the money, and I didn't have the money for a hotel room and all these kinds of things.
Yeah.
But I wanted to do something, and I set something up. I was like, I want to go there. So then I started figuring out, how am I going to afford that? What am I going to do to pay for that? And then I had just randomly connected with another buddy of mine. I've known him for a few years. He's a owner of Gracie Baja, Cloverdale, and White Rock.
Hmm.
So he owns 2 locations. And I just happened to drop in there, go for a roll last year. And then he was like, "Oh, we haven't talked for a while, man, because we've been friends for a few years now." He's like, "We haven't hung out for a while, man. What have you been up to? We should go for dinner." So that night we went for dinner, and we're hanging out, shooting the whatever. And
Hmm.
I start talking about what I'm doing. He's like, and then he started sharing with me, "Man, don't quit what you're doing. It's very helpful for people. Raises awareness." All like he was like really adamant about it, right? And he's like, "Any way I can help you doing anything, let me know." And I was like, "Okay, since you're offering, I'm gonna throw this out there. No obligation, nothing." I was like, "This is what I was planning to do, man. I'm thinking about going here. I'm thinking about connecting with some people. I'm thinking about making this, that, and the other." And he's like, um, "Cool. Do you like how you getting there?" I go, "Well, I still got to figure it out." He goes, "Don't worry about it. I got your airfare."
Oh, no
And I
way.
was like, and I was like, "What?" And he was like, "Listen, man, you got to keep doing what you're doing. You shouldn't have let things stop you doing what you're doing. I got your airfare. Don't worry about it." And so I get there, meet with people, and connect. So that's what network is, man. That's what it's about. It's not about like, oh, I'm trying to sell something. It's about others supporting each other. And had I not had my friend Eddie, who's a jujitsu guy, I've known him for a few years. I go there once in a while.
Hmm.
He valued the things that I'm doing. He wanted to support me as a friend. And now I go to Regina, connect with some more people. Now I'm friends with Steve, and I met some people there, and then I met some jiu-jitsu guys. So you're making more connections, and I think honestly, just for me, I'm better for it, and I know through those experiences, if I'm better for it, I mean, I think a lot of other people could be see some value in doing those types of things.
Yeah, like you said, stepping outside of your networks and making them your networks, right?
Yeah.
So for people who are sitting at home listening and they're like, well, I don't have any networks and I don't really know a whole lot of people. What are some of the barriers that they're coming up against, and how do you suggest that they um, conquer those? How do you suggest that they deal with those so that they can take that first step into setting up a network or stepping outside of their own networks?
I guess it has to come to why do you want to step out and why do you want to create a network? And if your life is in a way that you're doing fine and I was doing it because I was at a rock bottom and I needed to do something with my life, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But not everyone's in that scenario, and I still believe it's very beneficial for everyone to do that.
Right.
So, for example, if your life is fine, you got no issues whatsoever, in terms of like just on a day to day kind of thing, that's cool. But I would say, what could you do to make your life better though? Like you could improve upon it. You could make it even more fruitful by doing very little. And what's that very little? That very little is just talking to someone you would have never talked to before. So I guess it's overcoming the fear of just talking to someone, which is kind of strange if you think about it, because we talk to people all day, every day.
Mm-hmm.
And you see when people crossing paths, it's kind of weird when people say, "Hey, how you doing?" People are like, What?" Like it's weird.
Yeah. What do you want?
So yeah, what do you want? It's like, and listen, and look, you and I are probably very similar in this regard. In the uniform professions, it's even more so where you're like, "Why are you talking to me? What's
Yeah.
going on here?"
Yeah.
Like you're trying to find something, right? And I think that's a negative thing. It's good to have that, but not on all the time, right?
Yeah,
And I
it's
think,
pre-programmed in as a safety
yeah,
thing, but it's definitely a barrier to communication and
it's a
reaching out.
huge one. It was a major one for me, to be honest, because when people would connect me, I'm like, I'm always second guessing them. I'm like, what do you want? Not in a negative way, but like, I'm just like, what do you want? And then it had to get to a point where I started looking at myself from their perspective. Why are they talking to me? As opposed to me thinking about, in my own head, oh, why would they even talk to me? I'm putting myself in their shoes, thinking about, okay, as if they're observing me externally as a stranger. Okay, then I can maybe see why they want to engage with me. I could understand that to a certain degree. And then for me, that's how I started, because I didn't think anyone would want to talk to me. Why do you want to talk to me? I'm just some dude, whatever. Even
Hmm.
still, I think that way, right?
Hmm.
So I have to take myself out of myself and put myself into that other person and objectively look at me as an individual so that I can see, okay, maybe if I could see why I'd want to talk to me. Okay, cool. Let's go from there. And then that kind of makes, at least for me, it makes it a bit easier to understand why. I'll give you an example what I'm trying to say if I'm not being clear. Um, I had that experience with Cal Desange.
Mhm.
Cal DeSantis is a pretty prominent person in the Lower Mainland as it relates to Kids Play Foundations. It's a pretty big charity, and he was really nice to me. And I'm like, why is he being nice to me? In my head,
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm like, what's going on here, man? Like, and we just did a conference where he invited me to speak, and at the end of it, he was giving me kudos again, and then one of the president of the charity was also giving me kudos, and I feel awkward with it, and I even just said to him, I go, hey man, this is how I feel, and I even said to him, I go, hey man, when you were nice to me at the beginning, I was second guessing you. I was like, why are you even nice? What's going on here, dude? What do you want?
Right.
And
Yeah.
he's the one. This is the benefit of network. He's the one who's suggested and made sense to me that that's the uniform. It's because of the uniform that you're kind of that way, and because he experienced it before too when he
Mhm.
started doing all these types of things.
Mhm.
So I was like, oh, okay, maybe, because I never really thought of it that way. I just thought it was just, whatever. It's 18 years in law enforcement. You don't, you kind of just live your life. Eventually, you don't think about those things, right?
Mhm.
And so that's another benefit of a network. Someone else experiences something that you might not have, and they can identify something, saying, hey, man, maybe this is the reason.
Yeah, like you said, going back to the mom, the newly minted mom, as it were, and it's somebody I know talking to some of the new moms. Some of the things that they said was just having somebody walk up when they were breaking down and saying, "Oh yeah, no, this happened before, no problem, we got this," and they're like, "Really, really," tears streaming down their face, as new moms do, right? Like, I mean, it's a scary situation. It's something that you don't have a clue what's going on. You don't know what's normal. You think you knew what was going on, and now you have no idea. And just having somebody come up and go, "Oh yeah, that's not a big problem." Because to you, you're catastrophizing, right? It's the worst thing ever. And you can't get out of your own head when you're doing that. And you just go down this drain and somebody just puts a hand on your shoulder and just says, "Yeah, no, no, I'll show you how to deal with it. It'll be dealt with super quick." And talking to a lot of moms like that, that have had that experience, it's like, "Oh, I couldn't believe it to save, it saved my life. It was just incredible." I think what we do as people, though, and I don't think we realize this, is we look for connection. We look
Mm.
for that counterpoint in somebody else, and it doesn't have to be like an intimate connection. It's just we're looking for something that we're like, ah, I recognize that off in the distance. That's interesting. You think of like a big music concert, for instance, and everybody's in that moment together, all connected, right? You're maybe not relying on these people in the traditional sense like we're talking about with a network, but you're connected. It's part of that experience. And I think that when we reach out and we connect with other people and create that network, it feels more valuable. It feels more permanent. It feels more personable. And I think that we often forget that it's not just what we're getting out of that network, it's what we're putting in for the total.
Agreed. Looks, I think there's something to be said about like-minded individuals finding each other or creating a network and then being together collectively.
Hmm.
There's a reason why Sunday is a day of church. There's a reason why people go to synagogue or temple all together on relatively the same days, because they're like technically they're like-minded individuals, right? Getting together and putting that energy together, right? There's a reason for it. And most religions will say that you have to come together once in a while for sure, right? These occasions happen. And again, like for any real major connection to happen, you do have to be together. Like it's
Yeah.
it's just
Yeah.
a natural thing, right? And I think if you're all aligned and you're all moving in the same direction, I mean, really amazing things can happen. Now, we're not saying or suggesting that's what people should be doing. I'm not like all I'm suggesting and saying is, maybe entertain the idea of just branching out a bit, meet someone new, and
Right.
and see what you can cultivate out of it. Start there. You don't have to, create some organization and do this, that, and the other. It doesn't have to be that crazy, man. You can be your local coffee shop. Just head into the coffee shop and just sit there and you'll create a community or a network just that way, man. I would go to the same coffee shop for a few weeks in a row, and then you'd see the same people over and over and over and over again, and then you start talking to the people. I was I was doing that too. It was a
Yeah.
local coffee shop in my neighborhood. I would go there, at least once a week, and I would speak to the barista, and I became friends with her to a certain degree. And then she was a younger girl. She wants to be an astronaut, right? And then we just have conversations about that kind of stuff. And I'm learning something. She's like old enough to be my daughter, right? But I'm still taking in information, and I'm like, oh, that's cool. And then I get to understand what the younger people are thinking, right? Like if you're 20 years old, I have no clue what a 20-year-old thinks these days. None, zero, zilch, nada. So like it's also for me, it's an education being able to branch out of myself and talk to someone who's 20 years old. You would argue that, oh, what are you going to talk to a 20-year-old for? What's the point of that? What are you going to get out of that? A lot, a lot if I have an open mind, and a lot if I'm not leading with my ego. And
Yeah.
if I keep an open mind, I can take in information.
Yeah, I think that's a really important thing, like you said, not leading with your ego. I know when we set up our networks of like-minded people, it's pretty similar in our thought process and what we believe and things like that. But I think that that only nurtures that one portion of what you are. I think by stepping out of that network and going to something that you wouldn't normally do, and it's not necessarily that it's a group of people that are not like-minded, but it's people that you don't know yet. You're nurturing other parts of yourself. So things that you didn't even know you needed nurturing or developing. If you don't like the word nurture, then developing. I'm super developed. Like if all I do is go to the gym and do bicep curls, great. I'm super strong with bicep curls and I think I'm really strong, but I'm actually not because I haven't developed any other part of that. And I think that's the same thing with developing our networks or stepping outside of our own networks is we want to set those networks up. They're very powerful. They pursue us and propel us forward in what we're interested in, but it can be a little bit of an echo chamber in some cases where we're constantly reinforcing the things that we already know. So if we can step out of those networks into other networks, we can start developing the parts of us that I think that we're not aware are underdeveloped.
Yeah, and I, I can speak from some personal experience here, like in terms of like engaging with people. I'm not, for me, I do things when it feels right. Like I get a good feeling about it. So, I would even do that when I engage with people or even networks, because like you're saying, you might create an echo chamber, right? And you don't want to be around people that are saying, that aren't pushing back, that aren't having different sort of ideas and
Yeah.
thoughts. So for me, I'd engage with something that I think would be really out there, just to create that left and right of arc, if that makes
Hmm.
sense.
Yeah.
Just to go way out of left field and let me see what's going on over here. And if it doesn't work for me, cool. Now I can close that gap and go somewhere else. But then if I engage with a something that's totally out of left field for me and I feel something, well, now that's gold, man. I can. That's something I never would have found before. And that was coffee 2 years ago, man. That was coffee 2 years ago. I
Yeah.
mean, I'm telling you what, like I was Tim's and Starbucks, whatever, it's all the same, until I found something out of left field and started engaging in. I'm like, oh, I never thought in a million years oh, this is fun. So I think for me, it's about more about anything that curious about and then get passionate about. I'm starting connecting in that network, right? Because it can't be artificial and fake. And now, how do you know? Sometimes it takes time to get that feeling. So
Yeah.
you want to give it some time. You don't want to rush it. Oh, one visit and that's it. I'm out. Give it, assess it like an experiment, like a science experiment, and do some trials on it and see how it works. And if it works, cool. If it doesn't, okay, now you discard it and go to something else and do something different.
Yeah, I think that's important when you're saying discard it. It's keep in mind when you're reaching out and you're trying different networks, this isn't for life. You may become a part of this network. You may love it for a few weeks and decide, hey, you know what? I gave it a real good try. This isn't for me. I'm going to try something different. I'm going to devote my energy to something different. But also remember too that it could be 2 3 years in. Don't view it as a waste if you decide to step out or remove yourself from that network. It wasn't. What did you put into it and what did you get out of it? It's all benefit. So deciding to step out of it, I know a lot of people sort of feel like they're losing a part of their identity if they're stepping out of a particular network, but don't view it as that. View it as a part of you, and now you're going on to develop something else. It's so don't be panicked if oh well, you know, I like toy trains and I want to get involved in that network, but God, I don't want to do it for the next 40 years. Like that's not something you need to worry about. So your friend
Yeah.
networks, things like that, things that you're interested in, don't believe you have to put a specific time commitment into it to make it valuable to you and to the people that you're with.
I wouldn't put any constraints on it at all when you start anything,
Yeah.
right? Because you don't know. Like maybe you like it so much you want to spend the next 40 years doing it,
Yep.
right?
Absolutely.
So
Yeah.
it's with that leading without that ego and having an open mind to let whatever happens happen. And through that process, you'll be able to determine, you'll get that clarity over a period of time to figure that out. But I think you're right. Like some people don't take that opportunity or chance or connect with people because they don't want to engage in something for an extended period of time. They're already framing it in their head. Don't frame anything. Nothing's written in stone. Just go do it and see what happens.
Awesome. All right, Satch. To wrap up here, what do you think for our listeners, people who, like I said, don't have well developed networks? What are sort of a top three thing you think they can do to start looking for those networks and developing them?
Maybe do what I did. If you're on social media, just kind of scroll through your social media. Whoever's already on your friends list. And if someone you haven't even connected with or talked to, hit them up in a DM. Say, what's up, man? We've been following each other for a bit. I just want to get to know a bit more about you. Whatever. Or you can go into a coffee shop. Just go if you're drinking coffee anyways, don't just go in and grab it and peace out. Go hang out there for a half an hour, 45 minutes or an hour. Just watch people, see what's going on, maybe connect with someone, do something.
Yeah.
And I think for me, that's what I did. And that's how I started moving on that path.
Biggest success I ever had prior to my law enforcement career was going to the community centers and taking a class in something
Mm,
that's just sort of remotely interesting. It doesn't have to completely capture my attention, but you sit down with people and you talk with them at breaks, and you know they're struggling with stuff, and you help them, or you're struggling and they help you. It's fantastic. You go for like 3 4 classes and decide if you want to keep going. Reach out, no commitment. It's fantastic.
just one more
Um,
piece.
yeah, yeah.
Just one more piece. If you're going to do those things, for sure, make it something that you might be passionate about.
Yeah,
Because
oh yeah.
if you're doing these things and there's passion on both sides, then you can have those conversations.
Yeah. People who are passionate love talking about what they're passionate about, right? Yeah, if you have no interest in basket making, don't go to a basket making class. You're just going to be bored out of your skull.
Right.
All right. Any final thoughts before we go?
No, man, this was good chat. And if anyone else, if you have any feedback or any information as to any other suggestions on how to connect networks, please let us know what your thoughts are. And
Yeah,
we always take in all the information. We always want to do this better. So let us know what we're doing right and wrong.
100%. And remember, as always, because now we're on YouTube, remember to like, subscribe, and comment. It helps us out greatly. I hate saying that, but there we are. But yeah, help us out. Let us know how we're doing. And if you have any topics that you'd like us to touch base on, we've got a list already, but we're always open to listeners' comments, questions, topic suggestions, anything like that.
I think what we should do, we'll throw this out there. We should do one day, one should be like a movie thing, like a movie that we can talk about a movie and just dissect that for fun. That'd be an interesting one we could do, and see how it can relate.
I'd
Comparing
love
to
that.
because honestly, today we were talking about like First Blood and John Wick, and I was like, I want to dive deep here.
Oh, on the collective. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah. That was interesting. Yeah. If you haven't seen that, check it out. All right. From myself, Corey, and such, thanks very much for coming on once again, our journey here. And hopefully you got something out of it. Until next week, talk to you later, guys.
See ya.